Welcome to the Old Testament, number 13. And we continue on with the story. We have just had the story of Cain and Abel and Adam and Eve, being thrown out of the garden. And this is an expression that became the name of a novel. And it talks about East of Eden. This is a very strange story found in Genesis. Their eldest son, Cain, murders the younger, Abel, and then begins to populate the earth with his descendants. Where did the women come from? I told you that the last time, that, there was a land of people that was referred to in the book of Genesis. So, and some of these descendants who are populating the earth are worse than their father. They do wrong-headed things, like Genesis 4:19, taking two wives. And then it gets worse until, quote, I should do air quotes, the sons of God start taking as many wives as they want. And they take them from the daughters of men in Genesis chapter 6. Now, a lot of Bible scholars, scripture scholars, have wondered about these groups of people that they are talking about, and especially the expression, the sons of God. Many of the ancients thought they were fallen angels. St. Augustine said they were righteous descendants of Seth. Seth is Adam's third son. And some modern scholars suggest the royalty, since sons of God was a term used for kings in antiquity. Now, we can rule out the fallen angels, but the other two interpretations are possibilities. So feel free to take whatever you want. But the issue seems to be multiple marriages. Polygamy. The polygamy of the sons of God led to children who became men of renown or men of notoriety, Genesis 6:4. These notorious descendants of these polygamous relationships seem to offend God. And the reason may have a common sense explanation. Polygamous fathers don't have enough time to spend with their multiple sons to teach them how to be men, to teach them how to be good men. And so they kind of grow up on their own. So polygamous fathers are poor parents. Wild and fatherless sons grow up to be danger to other people and lead a society into chaos. This is the chaos that Genesis refers to in 6:5. The Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Ooh, these were really bad people. Continually they kept evil thoughts in their minds. So God's response to this is back up, reset, and start over. The evil actions of these notorious descendants provoke God to clean the earth with a flood and begin again, almost from scratch. God allows the world to return to the state of chaos that it was in the very beginning. And so you get a continued reference to his spirit over the waters. And so for a second time, God is going to pull dry land out of a flood. So we have a new notable character, new hero, Noah. Now, Noah and his family are the new beginning. of the human race. Why just Noah, you may think? Well, why didn't God save, a lot more people? Well, he actually did. He saved Noah and his family. But it seems that the scripture tells us, especially in the New Testament, that Noah was the only one that was interested in being saved. These notorious characters didn't have time for God, didn't have time for salvation, so rather they wanted to continue on what they were doing and forget all the other stuff that was going on. And so you see that kind of reference in St. Paul's letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11. Now, Noah is remembered as a preacher of righteousness. He told his contemporaries, the people that lived around him, as he is building this ark in 2 Peter 2, verse 5, he had a lot of time there. He's building the ark. He's telling them that they have to change so that they can be saved. But they ignore him. They have no interest in him. And so they just thought he was a crazy man building a big boat, even though he was preaching and building a long time. Now, the flood plunged the earth into a watery chaos. It resembled the situation that was at the original creation, before God began the 6 days of creation. Before he began, remember, we just had water covering everything. And when the dry land emerges, and it kind of does it in cycles. It starts out at 150 days and then kept working for months until Noah could actually leave the ark and walk on dry land. And so Noah and all of his animals, now, did you think, reminds us of Eden, all the animals. Now, they were already named, but all the animals are there with Noah. It's kind of like Eden all over again. But this is a one that seems to be floating. And it lands on the top of Mount Ararat. Now, once again, you see this whole image of a mountain. God likes mountains. So this is the new mountain of God. And so when Noah finally emerges from the ark, he does a priestly thing. So see, he's following in that same covenant that he is a priest. Obviously he was a prophet because he kept preaching. He was a king because, he's in charge of everything. And he is a child of God. But he is not a new Adam, because the new Adam is Jesus Christ. So there's not a new Adam. But he is actually living the covenant that he was supposed to be living, and everybody was supposed to be living. The covenant that we're supposed to be living. We are children of God. We are kings, priests, and prophets. So he was living what we were created to be, all of us. And so God makes a covenant with Noah. In Genesis 9, 8 through 13, it is written, "Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for all future generations. I set my bow in the cloud. God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all the flesh that is upon the earth." And so we have a second covenant. Now, just before we go into that covenant, I want to point out some other trivial things, which I should have already done. How many of each kind of animal did Noah bring on the ark? And everybody says, he brings a pair. And that's true. In Genesis 6, it says in verse 20, of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and every kind of thing that crawls on the ground, 2 of each will come to you, and you may keep them alive. So, what you think? I got you. 1 pair of each animal. But it goes on in chapter 7 to say, in verse 2, of every clean animal, take with you 7 pairs, a male and its mate, and of every unclean animal, 1 pair, a male and its mate. Likewise, then it goes to some more 7s and single pairs. So, when people talk about that, if you want to test if somebody knows the story of Noah, just ask them how many pairs of animals that they took, and they say, well, we don't have any animals enough. Is it a pair of each, or more, or less? And that will really reveal to you exactly what they do seem to know. And so, but see, you have this differentiation between clean and unclean animals, which is interesting because there were no clean and unclean animals until God established through Moses the idea of kosher. And so I'll have to ask the rabbi how they explain that. But it's probably because Noah knew which animals to bring that were important to God and which were not. And by the way, just to let you know, it was really tough on Noah because, as you get older, it's tough to build things and, take a trip and be surrounded by smelly animals. And Noah was 600 years old. And he was 601 when this whole thing finished. And it's important to note that there are all kinds of theories on why there are these long-living people in the Old Testament. And so as we go through this, I will give you samples of different theories. And today's sample is that it's what we call fill in the gap. We knew how long people lived, like the kings and things like that, and the time they figured out from Abraham. Well, now if you know when creation was, based upon the Jewish studies at the time, you have a date for the creation of the world. The Jews still celebrate that. And so you have certain notable people along the line. Well, basically what you do is from the people that you fill in until you come with the dates that you definitely know. So they filled in the gap, so Noah had to live 600 years because we know of Noah's descendants and when they lived, some, and their descendants, so we had to calculate. That's one theory. The other theory is that you have, see, I'm breaking what I said I was going to do. You have the theory that the further you get away from creation, there's more sin in the world. And remember, Noah is kind of sinless in the context of the world in which he lives. And so you have long times. Noah's 600 years, but there's just more and more sin, so people start living less and less time. And so you get to our situation where nobody lives to 600 anymore because we live in a sinful world. That's a different theory. Now, in terms of this covenant, God speaks to Noah and his sons using words we've heard before. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every bird of the air, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. And you be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly on the earth, and multiply in it." So yes, God is the one who instituted, eating meat. Yes, but he also instituted here eating the vegetables of the earth. And so it's our choice of which ones that we do. And see, most people focus on that aspect of the covenant, but there's a lot more in the covenant that's actually fascinating. And let's see, any living creature that moves about shall be yours to eat. I give them all to you as I did the green plants. Only meat with its lifeblood still in it shall you not eat. Now see, lifeblood. When you stab somebody, their blood pours out. Blood is life. Because if you lose all your blood, you lose your life. And so the Jews understood this. And so you have to protect blood. Because blood is what gives life. More so than breath, but they're both related. And because the breath is also from God. But you don't just spill blood, because that is spilling life. Now, you can eat meat except meat with lifeblood still in it. So in other words, the blood has to be drained out of the meat before you eat it. In other words, not, I guess it's steak tartare, or very rare when the blood kind of just oozes out. Can't eat meat that way. So I guess we're on a well-done diet. Indeed, for your own lifeblood, I will demand an accounting. So in other words, God knows how much lifeblood each of us have, and what happens to it, there will be an accounting for. From every animal, I will demand it. And from a human being, each one for the blood of another, I will demand an accounting for human life. To clarify that, he goes on to explain it. Anyone who sheds the blood of a human being by a human being, shall that one's blood be shed. For the image of God have human beings been made. This is where you see the first obligation put upon humanity, namely, no murder. Thou shalt not murder. There is an accounting by God for blood that is shed. So if you shed somebody's blood, in other words, you kill them, then the penalty, as it said, by a human being shall that one's blood be shed. That's because God knows where that blood is coming from. So what you do have is capital punishment. So, when people get into arguments about capital punishment, and I'm trying to avoid that, it was, in a sense, instituted by God here in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6, that somebody can be executed for murder. Now, murder, and see, even in demanding an accounting, this accidental death, that is not shedding someone's blood. It's accidental death. Even though the blood will be spilled out, it was not shed by somebody. And as we later develop theologies of war, that is also not considered the shedding of blood. But murder is. And that is the taking of someone's life without a justification. It also has an element of premeditation in there as well, in the legal sense. But when I said, without justification, I cannot make the decision to kill someone that makes it right with God. In other words, there has to be a societal, or better yet, because you can see at times when God instructs people to go to war and shed blood. That's fine. Because God's demanded the accounting, he knows where that blood is being shed for and why. And so then, after these elements of the covenant, see, the bow is then placed over the earth. And this is God's bow. And so we call it the rainbow. Now, this covenant is not only with humanity, but it is also with all the animals. The animals, too, don't have to worry about being flooded out the world again. But the animals, though, are not going to trust us. They're all going to fear human beings. And so that's the only animal that's really domesticated. I don't know about cats, but dogs, they are the only creature, I believe, that is born without a fear of a human being. Everything else, they fear us. There's something about, and I guess they know we could destroy the world once again. And so we have a new covenant. The bow shall appear. And the new covenant is that God will not destroy the world again by flood. Now, there are debates in here. He will never again become a flood to destroy every mortal being. And so people take that to say, oh, it's not going to be by water, so it's going to be by fire. That's conjecture. And, the people say, oh, the atomic bomb, that's fire. And God did not say he would not destroy the world again. He just said he wouldn't do it by flood. Okay, so all this language recalls Genesis 1. You have a covenant, you have a creation out of the water that God is doing the same thing all over again. God's original covenant relationship with Adam. So we can say that the covenant with Noah is, in a sense, a renewal, not a new covenant, but a renewal of the same covenant. That's why I said he is not the new Adam. And only the things are not as good anymore. Animals are not our friends. There's a fear on their part. But despite all these imperfections, the covenant with Noah brings us hope. Although the world is not perfect, humanity, which is Noah and his family, is back in a relationship with God. The flood is a recreation, and Noah picks up the covenant of Adam. So, this is our progression in sacred history or salvation history. We've had one covenant and two covenants, Adam and Noah. And you see all the similarities between the two. Remember, we keep saying that to understand a particular verse or to understand a book, you have to look at it in the context of a whole. And you will see images of the Mosaic covenant with Jesus, and you see images of all of this with Jesus, who walks on water, has dominion over the water. And so you have to look at the scriptures in terms of a whole. And that will bring us to our conclusion for today. I hope that you are finding Noah and the flood interesting, and that you will continue to join with us on our Old Testament studies. I thank you for being here, and I hope you'll see me again. And if you have any questions or comments, for those of you who are at the VA in Perry Point, my office is right next to the chapel, and I'm Father Jonathan Morse. And if you're in Baltimore, just go to the pastoral care office and tell them to contact me. They can do so, and either by email or by phone. And same thing at Loch Raven. You can see Chaplain Moore, who's there, and just tell him that not for him to answer you, but for Chaplain Morse to answer your question. And I can do it probably in a future episode, or I can get back to you directly. I have a great love for the Hebrew Scriptures, and I hope you will too, because it makes understanding Jesus a lot easier, because you see the foundations, the covenants, that Jesus is the new and eternal covenant and the last of the covenants. But it follows a whole line that you can see. God does not do things quickly. God took step by step by step through these different covenants to get humanity who had sinned and left him back on track for the coming of the Savior. I also can be reached at jonathan.morse@va.gov, and feel free to contact me. And thank you for joining me. You are a blessing to me. I hope this has been a blessing to you.